Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the June meeting of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society. My name is Jonathan Stair. I'm the president. I'm going to drag my feet a little bit because we're still expecting more people to come. And those of you who came later probably realize the street is parked full. So hopefully they'll find a place to park. I do want to thank a few people for some things. First of all, I'd like to thank Margaret for providing the centerpieces for the table. I'd like to thank my wife, Sherry, and my daughter Lydia for providing the homemade sugar cookies and pineapple upside down cupcakes. So I think Margaret likes my wife's sugar cookies. That's why I asked her to make some for her. So I must confess that Margaret usually puts this together. And I was telling her, I said, now I understand. You're just so crucial to our organization. So I'm delighted that she's receiving the Henry Young Award this afternoon. I thought that we might start by having us introduce some of our guests. So I asked Margaret to introduce her guests first.
This is my daughter Susan, and she was just married last weekend. And her husband is on call today, so he wasn't able to come. And this is my great granddaughter. Years old. And this is my granddaughter, my son's daughter, Amanda. Thank you. And this is my grandson, Josh, and his partner, Jesse. And this is my granddaughter, Tessa, is Susan. Josh's mother is Susan. And her husband, John.
One recipient today is Harry Senft, and a number of his family members are here. I'll introduce the ones that I corresponded with, and they're welcome to introduce other people. The nominator for Harry was his son, Michael Senft, where you went there, and his brother is George sitting in the back, and Harry's widow is Cheryl sitting right here. Did you want to speak while your table's there?
How you guys doing? Thanks for coming out. This is my sister Tina. This is my nephew Jeremy. This is my girlfriend Madison. This is her daughter Melfi. This is brother Graver. He's from my church. Brother Dibbs. As you know, this is Cheryl, my stepmother. This is Shirley, my cousin. This is my Aunt Shirley. My brother George, as you know, and his son DJ. And I appreciate you guys coming out and supporting him. He did a lot of work here, so I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was actually working here at the History Center in the library when Harry was doing research, and we received Michael's nomination. It brought back a lot of memories of my younger years when I was a baby archivist. My family's here today. My wife Sherry is sitting right here. Our two older daughters, Hannah and Lydia, are here as well. And my good friend Darren McCleary, who is also a member of our society. Now, as I warned most of you, before we go into the awards program, we do have to have a brief business meeting because we had not had one for 2 months and we need to elect the officers for the coming year. So members, our ballot of nominations for the coming year, the president, myself, Jonathan Stair, vice president Richard Kunkel, and director at large Tom Gibson, who's away at camp this summer. Are there any nominations from the floor? If not, nomination will be closed. I've asked for a motion to accept the ballot. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Okay, the motion passes. Those will be the officers who will hold a 2-year positions in the coming program year. At this time, I'm going to introduce our Vice President, Richard Kunkel, who will tell us a little bit about Henry Young and the award, and then he will give the first presentation to Margaret Burg. Such as this.
I'm likely to drop the mic for dramatic effect. Henry James Young, the namesake of this award, was born on February the 16th, 1908, here in York. The eldest of 4 children of James A. Young and his wife, Mary E. Hess. His father's family was from York County, and his mother was a native of Bainbridge, Lancaster County. In 1912, the family moved to New Jersey for his father to get a good managerial position. Henry's mother became overwhelmed and incapacitated and was institutionalized in a state hospital in New Jersey for the rest of her life. James Young and his young family had to return to York, with the 2 elder children being sent to live with strangers. During much of his youth, Henry Young was reared by Charles and Marie Pollack of York. The Pollack were a family of longtime wealthy watch and clock makers and jewelry store owners in York. They lived on Villa Terrace in Spring Garden Township. From 1922 to 1926, Henry was placed at the Hoffman Orphanage in Adams County, Pennsylvania. He returned to York and the Pollack family, where he spent 2 years preparing for college at William Penn Senior High School. He attended and graduated in 1932 from Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster with a degree in history. His intent in college had been to become a teacher, but when he graduated, the nation was in the depths of the Great Depression, and teaching positions were few and far between. Being very much unemployed, Henry Young had the opportunity to make frequent visits to the Historical Society of York County at their headquarters on the 3rd floor of the York County Courthouse. It so happened that in 1933, the society was in need of having the early church registers of Christ Lutheran Church in York translated. Henry was hired to do the job, and his good work resulted in a full-time position. He worked for the Historical Society of York County as a researcher and later as director during the years 1933 to 1942, and intermittently during the years 1951 to 1957. It was during Henry Young's tenure that the Historical Society moved out of the courthouse and into the Billmeyer House on East Market Street. Henry Young translated many more church records and instituted the vast vital statistic card file, which has proved so useful to genealogists. He also compiled family reports, volumes on York County and the American Revolution, as well as assisting with the York and Adams County cemetery surveys. His efforts and foresight in those years created the basis of the library's current wonderful collection. Dr. Young served in the U.S. Army during the Second World War from 1942 to 1945. His military service enabled him to continue his education after the war under the GI Bill. He prepared for his doctorate at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland from 1946 to 1955. From 1946 to 1949, he was the roommate of Dr. Charles H. Gladfelder, who was also preparing for his doctorate. Henry's dissertation was entitled "The Treatment of the Loyalists in Pennsylvania." While still preparing his dissertation, he worked from 1951 to 1957 as an archivist at the Pennsylvania State Archives in Harrisburg. Henry James Young was a professor of history at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, from 1957 until his retirement in 1973, and was known to many of his students as Tiger Young. He spent a sabbatical year studying at Mansfield College at Oxford University in the United Kingdom. After retiring, Dr. Young returned to genealogy.
He was an early life member of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society and took an active interest in our activities. Henry compiled a number of books on his own families and on the families of his foster families, the Polack of York. Mrs. Polack was of New England stock, and several of her ancestral lines he traced back to the Emperor Charlemagne. While pursuing these Carolinian lines, he did considerable important research in medieval genealogy. About 1985, he moved to the Sarah Todd Retirement Home, adjoining the Dickinson College campus. It was here that many of us became acquainted or reacquainted with Henry Young. In 1989, during the spring of my freshman year at Dickinson College, I was encouraged to call and visit him. I became a frequent visitor. My visits with him were as educational as they were enjoyable. At about this time, he renewed old ties with the Historical Society of York County and a number of South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society members began visiting him, including Al Rose, Lori Achenbach, David Hively, June Lloyd, and Betty Brown, among others. For the library, Henry began translating and transcribing onto vital statistic cards a number of the Roman Catholic and other church records. He filled out many thousands of vital statistic cards and continued to dedicate much of his time to translating records until the final years of his life, when illness prevented him from further activity. He passed away on February the 11th, 1995, in Carlisle. His final resting place is the burial plot of his great-grandparent, William and Margaret Strine Wolfe, on the highest point of Prospect Hill Cemetery, overlooking his native York. Anyone who has used the library of the York County History Center has certainly seen or heard of his name and used records which he created or started. His influence on York County genealogy and history was so extensive that the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society named its award for distinguished accomplishments in local history and genealogy the Henry James Young Award. We have 3 recipients today, and our first recipient is Margaret Louise Bouillon Burg, and she was born in Sacramento, California, the daughter of the late Wallace August Bouillon and Amanda Uris. Margaret's father was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, of French and German ancestry. The Bouillon family came from the French Principality of Montbéliard, which was Lutheran and ruled by the German House of Württemberg. Her French ancestors came to New Orleans by way of Haiti and Cuba. Her paternal surnames include Bouillon, Titenberg, Gutpile, Martin, Ponier, Ferrand, Deputou, Matamont, Fallot, Camus, and Winter. Margaret's mother, Amanda Uris, was born in Ely, Nevada, to Croatian immigrants from Mutlich and Bunich, Croatia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Croatians were working in copper and silver mines. Margaret's maternal surnames include Juratovic, which was changed to Uris, Papic, Bakaric, and Krinkovic. I think I got this pretty good. I'll make a little editorial comment here. Henry Young would have found Margaret's ancestry to be very interesting. He complained that us that have Pennsylvania German ancestry or ancestry is kind of boring. Said it's all the same people. And he actually himself wished that he was part Sicilian because he said they really have it all. Got the Berbers and the Arabs and Normans and the Italian people and Greeks and all kinds of stuff. So that's what he sort of wished he had in his ancestry, but he was kind of like a lot of us, he's pretty German. So he would have found Margaret's ancestry, he would have been really fascinated by it. Margaret graduated from Hiram Johnson High School in Sacramento, California, and attended Sacramento State College. She met an airman from East Prospect, York County, Pennsylvania, named Glenn Alden Burg, who was stationed at Mather Air Force Base in Sacramento. They were married in 1964 in Sacramento and were soon thereafter transferred to Fairbanks, Alaska, where they lived for a year. Upon Glenn being honorably discharged from the service, they relocated to Glenn's native York County. They moved to their farm in Conewago Township in June of 1967. Margaret continues to live on part of the farm. Margaret and Glenn were the parents of 2 children, Daniel Burg and Susan Burg. While raising her family, Margaret was involved with the elementary school PTA, Northeastern High School band parents, and she served as Strines Town Community Fire Company Secretary for 25 years. Margaret obtained a paralegal certificate from Penn State York in 1992 and worked in the legal field for Wilson and Associates and the CGA law firm until retiring in 2017. Margaret became a member of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society in 1994, and she was put to work almost immediately. She served as vice president, president, and treasurer she's been treasurer since 2001. She has been active with working on publications for the society, including a special publication entitled York, Pennsylvania Directory of the Poor Minutes, done in 2002, which is special publication number 60. She indexed World War I letters from soldiers and others from the scrapbook compiled by Mildred Grass in 2013, which is special publication number 75. And Margaret compiled abstracts from the parish telephone monthly newsletter, which was written by the Reverend Adam Stump for the Quickles Lutheran Charge, which included 4 churches: Quickles Church in Conewago Township, St. Paul Wolf's Church in West Manchester Township, Paradise Salem Church in Jacobus, and Mount Zion Lutheran Church in Springersbury Township. This is a large published book. Margaret has done extensive research on the ancestors of her late husband, in particular on the Burg family. She did research and worked on the history of Lower Windsor Township, York County, with the late John Overmiller. Margaret has enjoyed traveling extensively and being engaged in genealogical research. She currently is translating births and marriages from Croatian records of the area where her grandmother is from. Margaret has become very involved in quilting in recent years. And it's our great pleasure to award Henry James Young Award to Margaret Bouillon Burg. Yes.
Oh, that's pretty, very pretty.
Picture.
Is Erica, are you gonna get a picture of Erica
Or maybe we'll get
afterwards?
that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, great. I'll do that. Okay. Yeah, I'll say a few words.
Okay.
I was really surprised when Richard told me that I was nominated for the award. I really hadn't thought I'd done much other than the treasury and that. And so I want to thank the society very much for this honor. It is an honor. It has been very rewarding to work with the society for 30 years. And I want to thank my family for coming today. I twist their arm. I always twist their arm because of the day, well, I haven't finished the will yet, but the one thing I just wanted to say, because I found the Burg family very interesting, as you heard, all of the names that are in my family, and there probably wasn't, other than Martin, there probably wasn't another York County name in that batch of names. So when I started on the Burg family, it was just so very interesting. And where it began was with a question to my husband: are you a Red Lion Burg or an East Prospect Burg? And so I'm going, I didn't know there was a difference. And he really came right out, said East Prospect Burg. So I asked him why. Well, that's where we live, that, nothing more. He was not much into genealogy. So I set out to find out who was who. I began at the History Center Library, which was an absolute treasure trove of information because of all the things that have been kept for all through the years. And then I had a book from Glenn's father, the Gilberts of Canadogila family ballads, which is Canadogly, actually, family or valley. And that was written by Melvin Gilbert. So with that, the library and the volunteers, particularly Barb Rudy, who got me the membership into South Central. And then the other volunteers who it ended up, Glenn was related to quite a few people around. And I often joke that Richard is related to everybody in York County. And it turns out my husband and Richard were related way back. And, but anyway, Barb Rudy was instrumental in me getting involved. And I was no sooner a member, and Gloria Achenbach called on the phone, and she asked me to run for vice president. I mean, there was no grass growing under my feet from the time I got to be a member and got to be vice president. So anyway, what I did, the basis that I found was that George Christian Borgelfoss in 1803 was the immigrant from Dissen, Osnabrück, Germany, and he brought with him 4 sons, his wife, and 3 daughters. The oldest son, Frederick, moved on to Illinois in 1827, and I made contact with a lot of that family, who is a very Latter-day Saints Mormon family in that group. The second son, Daniel, he moved on to Indiana. Frederick kept the name Borgelfoss, and the people to this day are still all the Borgelfoss name. Daniel, he changed his name to Holthouse and dropped the border. Indiana, about 1828, I have only found one descendant of him, and that is a Ziegler, a female that was the Ziegler family. So that I don't know much about him. The 2 that stayed in York County in 1830, they changed the name to just Burg, and that is Philip and Burg Henry, and they are the 2 that became the Red Line and the East Burg. So that's how that worked out really well. Since then, I think I've got 12,000 in the family tree of the Burg family. It's very, very large and extensive. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Anybody want to say anything about Margaret? We did it. What did we call it? That his hair.
I just want to say that when Margaret's name came up, I said, "You mean she hasn't received the award yet?" Because she has done so much for the society. She's also been a particularly huge help to me as president. So congratulations, Margaret. And I want to say one thing about Henry Young. I haven't met him, I think, 2 or 3 times in my life. But the first time I met him, and he didn't know me from Adam, but the first time I met him, I'm sorry. He didn't really know who I was. The first time I met him, he remembered my full name ever after that. I was surprised with me that one person who could remember somebody's insignificant in my life. So I really appreciate him. Oh, yeah, he did. So it's my pleasure to present the award to the Senft family in memory of Harry Eugene Senft. Harry Eugene Senft was born on August 6, 1947 in York to Harry Edward Senft and Gertrude May Geyer Senft. He was a combat veteran of the Vietnam War, serving from 1967 to 1968 in Battery E, 2nd Battalion, 12th Marines, 3rd Division. Known by many in the York area as Butch, he worked for more than 30 years as a machine operator at Fort Warner, Lady Luck International, and he was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He died from COVID on Monday, October 12, 2020, at Memorial Hospital here in New York, leaving his wife, Shore White Senft, who is with us here today. He was buried in Prospect Hill Cemetery. And in addition to his wife, his obituary lists the following family members, some of whom are here today. Sons, Harry Fogel of Yo, George Senft of Grand River, Ohio, who's back there with us, and Michael Senft, also here today. Daughters Tina Senft of Painesville, Ohio, Christiana Senft of Hialeah, Florida, and brother George Senft of York. Sister Shirley Webb of Red Lion, and Shirley's here, right? Yeah, there she is. And Florence Knisely of Virginia, and stepson Brian Bean of Outer Banks, North Carolina. Today, we are here to recognize the significant contributions that Harry made to the genealogical community. He was an indefatigable researcher who spent countless hours in libraries, archives, and cemeteries documenting his own family history and that of others in the New York area. And I personally recall the numerous times that he came into the library of the York County History Center to search for a piece of information. And we have a picture of him that Michael provided to me, but there is a picture of him on, I think, Find a Grave, which shows him as a younger person. That's kind of how I remember Harry, more so than this picture. And so I can still picture him kind of bopping into the library to come do research. For more than 30 years, he served as the family historian of the Senft family. But what we most appreciate about Harry, and the primary reason that we enthusiastically support his nomination for this award, is that he took more than 250,000, one source says 280,000, photographs of gravestones in 300 to 400 cemeteries in York and Adams counties and surrounding counties, and contributed those images to Find a Grave and to the Family Heart website. Find a Grave conservatively, I say conservatively because I'm not sure that they literally sat down and counted these, but they conservatively estimate that Harry added 142,241 photographs and almost 46,000 memorials to their website. In addition, he provided 2,300 volunteer photographs. The Family Heart website has an entire section labeled Harry Senft Cemetery Pictures, which I didn't realize until Lynn Nelson pointed me to that. And you can go to these sites today and see the results of Harry's productivity. Keep in mind, 280,000 photographs. Michael said 1 million. I didn't find it, I couldn't get an application of 1 million, so I would have used that figure. But maybe if he took multiple pictures of the same stone, it might have been 1 million pictures that he took. But obviously, he was very productive. All of us could be thankful for this tremendous body of work. His son Michael, who nominated him, spoke of Harry's relentless effort and time put into this hobby obsession of his. And Harry's wife, Cheryl, kindly called it a special precious gift that helped others to find their families. It's for this precious gift of hundreds of thousands of gravestone photographs that he left to us, and for his dedication to genealogical research, it is our delight to bestow the Henry James Young Award on Harry Eugene Senft. Please join me in giving him and his family a round of applause. I'd like George and Michael and Cheryl to come forward to receive copies of the certificate. So please give them a round of applause. Now, I will say, from my memory, that George looks the most like Harry. Is that what you guys agree or not? I don't know, but that's sort of what I picture. Except he could never grow mustache. Harry couldn't. I don't know if I'd like to say something about Harry.
Special testimony, his own personal testimony that I figured I would share with you. My father literally dedicated his life to family history. This is what he enjoyed doing every day, each and every night of his life. But this is how he had come in and found himself. Early 1979, I was a slave to alcohol and drugs. to the point where I no longer want, but sorry, Michael ended. Through prayer and faith, I was able to change things about myself that I never could control before, such as violent temper, not telling the truth. This then prompted me to want to know the truth about Jesus Christ and his God. I started looking and praying for the truth, willing to give up all that I had to find it. Attended different churches, hoping that one would have Jesus Christ as the lead. Giving instruction and counsel as he did in the Bible, as opposed to church leaders and to church leaders agreeing with everyone's doctrine and patronizing one another. Finally, in October 1979, I visited the LDS Church in York, PA. I asked the missionaries to visit me so I could learn about their church. Shortly thereafter, the missionaries, Elder Rustin Townsend and Elder Donald Sparks, came to my house. They taught me a lot about things about Jesus Christ in the Bible. They also gave me a Book of Mormon. I promised to read a chapter a day until I finished it. It helped me change my life more than anything in this world, save the Bible. It also helped me and gave me more faith, helped me to come closer to God and understand the Bible more than I had before. I learned that the same Spirit that testifies that Jesus Christ is the living Son of God prompted me to know that he had died and come into the flesh and is God, that he died on the cross for the sins of the world, was buried and resurrected 3 days later. That same Spirit prompted me that the Book of Mormon was true, that was translated by Joseph, the prophet of the Lord of Jesus Christ. Even the great Spirit that prompts man toward good which is in the light of Christ, even the convincing power of the Holy Ghost, which I was reading the Book of Mormon. I saw more films of the South American archaeology, since archaeology digging that area hadn't started until after the death of Joseph. I knew then that he couldn't have known about the discoveries found, how they matched with the Book of Mormon. I was impressed to learn that the missionaries of the other church and the other church leaders were not paid for the work that they did in the church, just like the followers of Jesus Christ, the Bible. I'll stop there. But I'd like to talk about a few of our ancestors. My grandfather, he also fought in the war. This comes from his book of remembrance. He was known as Hack. As Harry was nicknamed, an orphan by the age of 10 years, born and raised in York, PA by his aunt and uncle Louise Santa Fry, George S. Fry, who married Gertrude May Geyer on the 29th of 1829, entered the U.S. Army 31st of March 1944, serving in Europe in World War II in the 116th Infantry. And he was awarded a number of distinguishing medals, including the Bronze Star Medal. He was discharged the 19th of October 1945, and returned to York, PA. He ultimately became a manager of a number of tire distributors. Known as a dedicated worker and loyal family man, Hack possessed a jovial personality and consequently was well loved by both family and friends. His untimely death had a devastating effect on his wife and children. That was my grandfather. He's actually up, there's a monument, Prospect Hill, where he's actually on that monument that has a part of the 9/11, one of the 9/11 beams on it, as well as another ancestor of mine. And then this is actually a really cool story. There's a member of our family named the Spanglers. Well, there was an interesting fact about some of the Banglers. Spangler left his wife and children in Würzburg, Germany in 1189, become the cupbearer to the bishop who served as emperor. He served as emperor. He was an high honor and a significant role that he required Spangler to carry the cup used for the Eucharist. He also tasted the bishop's food, make sure it wasn't poisoned. Spangler accompanied the bishop on the emperor's crusade to free the Holy Land from the empire that they never made. The emperor drowned in Syria and was buried in the church of St. Peter. Plague soon took the bishop and his cupbearer, and they were laid to rest with their Lord. This unfortunate fact of history won the Spangler family the right to a very impressive coat of arms, one which symbolizes the important role sacrifice made by George through the intervening centuries, such as George's descendants that left quite a mark of their own. There was an infamous, he was the more popular Spangler. Later on, there was a Spangler that was very infamous. He was the driver for John Booth. He actually he supposedly held the carriage for John Booth as he assassinated Abraham. He served 3 years and doubled that. But he claimed that he didn't have the time to do it. In the newspaper article, he said that he had someone else do it for him because he didn't have the time, so he paid someone else to drive. But because he was actually the original guy, he had to serve the time, even though he didn't know what John Booth was going to do. But some interesting facts about our family. Then my grandfather on my mother's side, he was Mennonite, and he was out working in the farm. As he was working in the farm, a storm came up. And as he was unyoking the ox, the lightning struck her. And not only struck him one time, but it did it twice. The first time he lived and went back home, but it happened again, maybe another month or 2 months later, and it ended up taking his life. But I love researching the family history. My father I'll never match up to what he is. We traced our family back to the deceased and found out that we have family members with, some of our ancestors of Alexander the Great, King Midas, and seeing that, it's pretty impressive, all the royalty that we're attached to. It's pretty cool to be able to say that we have some royalty. And I'm really impressed with what my dad did, because as I look through the genealogy, he actually inputted over 500,000 people. He found over 500,000 people of our relatives. That's amazing. He dedicated his life to going to the temple and making sure that their work was done so that they would be able to progress and join our Heavenly Father in His celestial kingdom. But I'm so proud of what my father did, and I didn't nobody got to introduce my uncle, George. He came in a little late. That's my father's brother and his niece, Deb. And it's so nice that everybody was able to make it. I'm sure Michael and Cheryl would have something to say as well. But I originally got to go out with him when it was genealogy was part of the deal. We went to courthouses when I was 9 years old. We'd go to courthouses, cemeteries, libraries, looking over microfilm for hours and hours, and he was into it. He was very, very dedicated to finding his family. He wanted to find it, always had. And I figured that if I can find it, always will show the Egypt, I'll be good. Because it has one of our ancestors as well. Even though I haven't gotten that far, but I know he's one of our ancestors. And I thank you for showing up. And for what my father did.
Said it all for me.
Did we get some pictures?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
We have one final presentation today. Before we do that, I wanted to just make a little comment here. This is probably the last meeting that we will have in this room. South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society has had meetings here since 1975, so very nearly 50 years. However, I am happy, even though we're not going to have them here anymore because there's a new facility, happy to report I've seen the new meeting room. And I think you'll all be very, very happy with that space. Very, very nice. And actually, if you get bored with the speaker, you don't have a whole lot to look at in this room other than woodwork. You can gaze out the window. Maybe you might have to turn your back though, or it might not be good. You can see the skyline of York in the new room. So very nice. But this is kind of a farewell, and we're having a very nice program here today. So it's a nice meeting to go out on here today. Our final recipient today is Jonathan R. Strayer. Here I said the wrong, it's been the curse of his life. Jonathan R. Strayer. Jonathan was born in Ephrata, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the son of the late George E. Strayer and Jane Fry Strayer, who then lived in Denver, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. His father's side is mostly Church of the Brethren with some Mennonite and Amish ancestry. The Strayer family was originally in Loudoun County, Virginia, and then migrated to Bedford County, Pennsylvania in 1813, and lived there until about 1900. Several generations in the early 1900s moved quite a bit between Queen Anne's County, Maryland, Laverne, California, and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Jonathan's father moved back to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Surnames include Strayer, Fayok, Royer, Hertzler, Pennypacker, Lehman, Wise, and Berkey. Some of his ancestors were associated with the Ephrata cloister. Obviously not the celibate ones. Jonathan's mother's family all came to Pennsylvania before the American Revolution, and she never lived more than 50 miles from where her ancestors settled in Lancaster, Lebanon, and Berks counties. Her ancestors were of the Mennonite, Lutheran, United Brethren, Methodist, Church of the Brethren, and Moravian faiths. Jonathan's mother's surnames include Fry, Gundrum, Waltz, Fittery, Ryder, Boyce, Lane, and Arndt. Jonathan graduated from Central York High School in 1978 and graduated from Messiah College in 1982 as a history major. While in college over the summers of 1979, 1980, and 1981, he worked at work study at the library of the then Historical Society of York County. He was hired part-time as assistant librarian in 1982, while Landon Reisinger was librarian. In 1984, he was hired for a temporary job as a field survey archivist to do county record surveys for York, Adams, Lancaster, and Fulton counties. He must have done a really good job because he was hired full-time with Pennsylvania State Archives in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, in 1985. And he worked there until 2019 as a reference archivist. And in 1990 was promoted as a supervisor of the reference section. In 1988, he obtained a master's degree in American Studies from Penn State, Harrisburg. Jonathan's research and historical interests include family history and trying to find all of his immigrant ancestors. He's also very involved with camp security here in York County, an early Revolutionary War prisoner of war camp, and researching Pennsylvania's Civil War conscientious objectors. He has given numerous presentations on these topics and on holdings of the Pennsylvania State Archives. His master's thesis was a study of the Hessians of Lewis Miller, and he contributed to a book on the same subject by the Johannes Schwalm Historical Association. He has been the compiler and wrote the introductions to the South Central Pennsylvania series of publications on the 1862 draft enrollment lists of York County. He contributed to the Pennsylvania Archives 2003 book entitled Documenting Pennsylvania's Past, written to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the state archives. And he has written numerous other historical and genealogical articles over the years. A recent major article was about the naming of the Brethren in Christ denomination, which appeared in Brethren in Christ History and Life. Jonathan has been on the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society board since 2014 and had served several years previously in the 1980s. He has also served as recording secretary, vice president, and president. He also served on the board of the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania from 1997 to 2004. He currently serves, as well as on the board of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society, on the boards of the York County History Center and the Friends of Camp Security. He also serves as a volunteer at the Pennsylvania State Archives and has assisted with the move to the new facility with deaccessioning library and archives materials that are outside of the current collecting policy of the York County History Center. Jonathan has been married to his wife, Sherry Curry, since 1982, and they are the parents of 3 daughters, Hannah, Lydia, and Maria. They currently have 2 grandchildren. They are members and very active with Grace Baptist Church of York. It's our great pleasure to give the Henry James Young Award to Jonathan Stair.
So before we adjourn the meeting and I allow you to get some snacks, I just want to say a few personal words. I too would like to thank the society for this award. And like Margaret, I was blown over. In fact, I was planning this whole thing when Richard said, I were talking one night about something regarding this program. And he said, well, you know your report, it's awesome. And I said, I think I was speechless for about a minute doing the vote. And I said, well, I don't think I did that much. I said, I'm in the process of helping plan this. It might be a good idea to push it off. Well, then that idea floated among the board, and Lynn Nelson said, you ought to take it while you get it. And I did it. So I said, go through a flurry of emails, people trying to encourage me to take it on and refusing. So I'll just accept it. And I want to thank the board and the society very much for this award. Before I go any further, I do want to introduce my brother, who I've laid in his wife, my brother Tom, and his wife Gay. One special thing about Tom is one of my traveling companions in our various trips to typically visit stair sites in Pennsylvania. So he and I have had some interesting experiences traipsing through woods, going to old houses and so forth. And Gay has a special connection to this organization. She and I are the co-executives of the estate of Alfreda Patton Davidson, who was a former recipient of the Henry James Young Award and also a former officer in this organization, which leads me to one thing I wanted to say. is I've been associated with South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society since probably about 1980 or 81. From working as a library, assistant librarian here at the Historical Society. And Landon Reisinger, who was a librarian, was one of the people who was very instrumental in helping me to learn what to do, teaching me about resources. And he was a very great teacher to me. Also, Alfreda Patton Davidson, who was associated with our family for years before that. She was the one, we moved to York in 1969. I think my mother met her in 69 or 70. She was my mother's good friend. She was single, so she kind of treated our family as her family and was always at our house. And she knew I had an interest in history, and she said, well, you really ought to get into genealogy. And I was kind of resisting that because I thought, well, genealogy wasn't really true history, but she kept on pushing it. Two of my favorite memories. One is before I could drive, she took me to the state library one day to do research. She was going to do research. She said, well, you ought to try to look up what you can about your family. Well, I didn't really have anything. So she showed me how to make a pedigree chart. And I still have that rudimentary pedigree chart that I drew, showing my ancestors going back whatever generations I knew, which was only about 8 generations at that time. And so that was kind of one story about Alfred. The other thing was she periodically had us children, my siblings and I, over to her house to stay, play games or whatever. And so one day I was there and she said, would you like to go to the DAR library in Washington, DC with me? I said, well, yeah, I'd like to, but I wasn't dressed for it. I only had an old pair of jeans that had a patch on the knee and I think an old t-shirt or something. She said, well, that's a style these days. Just go down there. Nobody's going to care. So we go down to the DAR library with only 3 proper ladies. I'm showing up in jeans with a patch on the knee. But that was a neat experience to do that. She always encouraged me in my genealogical pursuits. But there were many early members of the society that helped me as well. Names that come to mind, like Dave Heiley and Len Heilman, were very encouraging and supportive and gave me things. Gloria Achenbach, I always call her my genealogical mother because she was always encouraging me, telling me things that I could check, pointing me in the right direction. Somebody mentioned Betty Brown. Betty Brown was another good resource for me. And so this society has really helped me along the way. When I got close to retirement and Barb Rudy asked me to serve on the board again, I felt that it was my time to start giving back to the organization that's helped me. So that's kind of why I'm here in this position. Unfortunately, once you say yes to something, they don't let you go. But if anybody else wants to be president, I won't step down at any time. I don't have any too many takers for that. So thanks again for the award. I could tell you a lot about my ancestry, but I won't bore you with that. Just throw out 2 things I like to say. I'm a direct descendant of Jacob Hertzler, who was the first politician in the United States. I'm a direct descendant of Hendrik Becker, or Penny Becker, I don't think to say it, who was a surveyor for William Penn. So those are my 2 claims to fame. Other than that, my family were poor farmers most of the way going back. In fact, some were so poor, they're very difficult to trace, but they didn't leave much of a record. They didn't even pay taxes, that's how poor. Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned. Please help yourself to the refreshments over here, circulate around. You're welcome to stay as long as you like. And hopefully, for those of you who live in the York area, you'll come back to some of our meetings in the future. And as Richard mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned that our future meetings will be down at the new history center. It's called the Steam Plant. It's located at the corner of West Philadelphia Street and Pershing Avenue. Yes, Richard.
Our next meeting is the last Sunday in August, and that will be an introduction and tour to the new facility. So if you want to get acquainted with it, time to come.
Yes. Yes, sir. This facility, it will be sold. In fact, I think it's on the market. I know it's on the market right now, right? I'm not sure if they have any buyers lined up or not, but they've had some interested parties for this facility. The idea is that the money from the sale of this facility will help to fund a little bit part of the construction of the new facility. And for those of you who are members of the York County History Center, the last 3 weekdays in June, I want to say June is the 26th, 27th, 28th.
will be open house for members only at the New History Center. You do have an opportunity to get a peek inside what's going on down there. And unlike here, they have a parking lot that's actually right adjacent to the building. So there will be no more fighting for other people parking on Market Street. I think there'll be plenty of parking down there. Thanks again for coming. I'm delighted you're all here. Please help yourself to some refreshments.